In 2020, a retail platform discovered that roughly 3% of product prices in their checkout service had drifted from the master pricing catalog. The drift had been accumulating for 7 months. A race condition in their event consumer caused some price update events to be acknowledged without being applied. The price was marked as updated in the consumer's log. The actual value in the checkout database did not change. Support tickets about incorrect prices had been arriving for months. Each was resolved individually. The customer received the correct price. The record was manually corrected. Nobody had connected those corrections to a systemic problem. The quarterly pricing audit did. 7 months of drift. 3% of prices wrong. Hundreds of individual tickets treated as isolated incidents. Consistency drift is the gradual divergence of data from a source of truth over time. Not a sudden break, not a defined boundary between consistent and inconsistent regions. A slow, directional movement away from correctness. Small at first, growing with time. It accumulates across every operation that should have kept the data aligned but did not quite manage it. What makes drift distinct from other consistency failures is the time dimension. The data was correct once. It became less correct gradually. At any given moment, most of the data is still right, or close enough to right that the difference is not immediately visible. The problem is the trajectory. If the divergence rate is positive and nothing addresses it, the gap widens every day. 3 mechanisms produce consistency, drift reliably. The first is incomplete event propagation. Many systems maintain consistency between a source of truth and downstream copies by publishing events when the source changes. The downstream system consumes the event and updates its local copy. When events are occasionally missed, dropped, or only partially processed, the downstream copy falls behind. This happens through network conditions, race conditions under load, or consumer bugs. Each missed event leaves it slightly further from the source. Over time, a reliable-looking event pipeline can produce significant drift through a low but persistent miss rate. The second is imperfect cache and copy refresh. Systems that maintain denormalized tables, materialized views, or cached copies of data rely on a refresh mechanism to stay current. When that mechanism runs on a schedule, failures between refreshes leave the copy stale. When it runs on triggers, missed triggers leave specific records behind. When the refresh logic applies a transformation, small errors accumulate across runs. The copy is never fully wrong. It is updated regularly and mostly current. But the subset of records where the refresh did not land correctly grows quietly over time. The third is accumulated transformation error. Some data passes through the same transformation repeatedly. A currency conversion applied at ingest and again at report time. A rounding step applied at each aggregation stage. Each pass introduces a small error. If those errors are directional rather than random, they accumulate. The output of the 100th transformation is measurably further from the true value than the output of the first. The individual error is too small to notice. The accumulated error is not. 3 things address this. The first is drift rate monitoring. The most important signal for catching drift early is not whether the data is currently wrong. It is whether the gap between the data and the source is growing. Measure the divergence between your downstream copy and your source of truth on a regular schedule. Track the divergence rate over time. A growing rate signals a problem before the absolute error becomes large enough to notice in individual records. If 3 records disagreed last week and 30 disagree this week, the rate is the signal. Whether 30 records seems significant in isolation is the wrong question. The second is delivery guarantees on event propagation. If your consistency mechanism relies on events, the delivery contract matters as much as the event content. Fire and forget delivery provides no guarantee that the consumer applied the update. The publisher publishes and moves on. Whether the consumer finished is unknown. Move to at least once delivery with acknowledgement after application, not after receipt. An idempotent consumer that safely reprocesses duplicate events is more reliable than one that acknowledges events before fully applying them. The race condition in the retail platform's checkout service existed because the consumer was acknowledging receipt, not completion. The third is periodic full resync. Incremental updates are efficient, but they accumulate every error the incremental mechanism introduces. A full resync replaces the downstream copy with a fresh read from the source. It resets accumulated drift regardless of its cause. For most systems, a full resync does not need to run continuously. Weekly, daily, or at each deployment is often enough. The key property is that it provides a ceiling on how far drift can accumulate. Between resyncs, drift can grow. At the next resync, it resets. The longer the interval, the higher the ceiling. But there is a ceiling. The retail platform introduced delivery acknowledgement after application, not after receipt, in their event consumer. They scheduled a nightly full resync of checkout prices against the master catalog. They added a daily reconciliation that counted price disagreements and alerted when the count exceeded 10 records. The support tickets stopped. Not immediately. It took several days for the backlog of drifted records to clear, but they stopped. Consistency drift is the failure that looks like noise until it looks like a trend. Individual instances are small enough to explain away. The support ticket is a user error. The wrong value is a display bug. The reconciliation discrepancy is a timing issue. It is only when you measure the rate of these small events over time that the pattern becomes visible. Drift does not announce itself as a consistency problem. It announces itself as a long tail of minor issues that gradually becomes impossible to ignore. And by the time it becomes impossible to ignore, months of accumulation are waiting to be unwound.